Welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing a deep dive on something that might surprise you. We're going to be talking about how certain chemicals could actually be linked to thyroid problems.
Yes, that's right. We're looking at a 2020 study called, get this, cross-reactivity between chemical antibodies formed to serum proteins and thyroid axis target sites. Don't worry, we'll break all that down for you. It's really cutting-edge research that has big implications for how we think about environmental impacts on our health.
Okay, so chemicals and thyroids. Where do we even begin with this?
It all starts with your immune system. You can think of your body like a fortress, right? And your immune system is kind of like the army that's defending it. So it's constantly on the lookout for invaders like viruses and bacteria.
Okay, makes sense. So where do the chemicals fit into this fortress picture?
Well, sometimes these chemicals, which are often, found in everyday products, they can attach themselves to proteins in your blood.
Okay.
And it's kind of like they're putting on a disguise, to use the fortress analogy.
A disguise? What do you mean? Like they're going incognito. What happens then?
Exactly. They become unrecognizable. And this process, what it does is it changes the shape of the protein. Now imagine those soldiers in your body, they're used to seeing the same friendly faces every day. Suddenly, someone they thought they knew looks completely
Oh,
different.
I see where you're going with this. The immune system gets a little suspicious.
Exactly. The immune system thinks, oh, something's up here, raises the alarm and sends out antibodies. Those are like the security team, right?
Yeah.
To investigate this disguised protein.
Okay, so the immune system is on high alert, mistaking these disguised proteins for something dangerous. How does this lead to thyroid issues, though?
That's the million-dollar question, and that's what makes this research so groundbreaking. So this study found that these antibodies, the ones that were sent out to deal with the disguised proteins, can actually start attacking parts of your thyroid gland.
Wait, seriously, they're attacking the wrong target. How does that even happen?
It's a case of mistaken identity. The antibodies are confused, right? Because of those disguised proteins, and they end up targeting really crucial parts of your thyroid. We're talking about things like the TSH receptor, thyroid peroxidase, and thyroglobulin.
Whoa, those are some pretty complex names. What exactly are these things? Why are they so important for my thyroid?
They're like the essential workers of your thyroid. So let's take the TSH receptor, for example. That little guy is responsible for receiving signals from your brain that tell your thyroid how much hormone to produce.
So if these antibodies are messing with the TSH receptor, that means?
It means your thyroid's ability to produce the right amount of hormones could be compromised, and we all know how vital thyroid hormones are, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they affect everything from our metabolism to our energy levels, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. So something as common as chemicals, the kind that we might be encountering every day, could be setting off this whole chain reaction inside our bodies.
You got it. And that's what makes this research so fascinating and a little bit concerning, right?
Yeah.
Because it really opens our eyes to just how intricate our bodies are, how we interact with the environment, and what the potential consequences of these interactions can be.
This is blowing my mind. So we've got these disguised proteins tricking our immune system, and then these antibodies go after our thyroid. It's like a domino effect. But tell me more about these thyroid components you mentioned. What exactly do they do, and what happens when they're under attack?
You're exactly right. It's like a chain reaction. Let's take thyroid peroxidase, for example. It's like, imagine it as like a master chef in your thyroid, and it's responsible for this really crucial step in creating your thyroid hormones.
Okay, so if the antibodies are attacking the chef, then it's going to mess with the recipe, right?
Precisely. And then we've got thyroglobulin. Think of that as the main ingredient that the chef needs.
Okay.
It's a protein that basically gets transformed into those essential thyroid hormones.
Gotcha. So if the antibodies are interfering with either the chef or the ingredients, it's no wonder our thyroids might start having some problems. This is really starting to make a lot more sense, but it does raise some questions for me. Does this mean that everyone who is exposed to these chemicals is going to develop a thyroid issue?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And this particular study doesn't really give us a definitive answer on that. Everyone's immune system is different, and we all react to exposures in unique ways. There's still a lot more research that needs to be done to understand, who's most at risk and why.
So it sounds like this is really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to understanding how things in our environment can actually affect our thyroids.
Absolutely. What's so exciting about this study is that it reveals a potential mechanism. Basically, it's a way in which exposure to certain chemicals could be linked to thyroid dysfunction. So it opens up all these new avenues for research and could eventually lead to new ways to diagnose, treat, and even prevent certain thyroid problems.
This is definitely a lot to digest. We've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the immune system, disguised proteins, antibodies going rogue, and then those really essential workers in our thyroids. What's the key takeaway you want listeners to remember from all of this? This is definitely a lot to digest. We've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the immune system, disguised proteins, antibodies going rogue, and then those really essential workers in our thyroids. What's the key takeaway you want listeners to remember from all of this?
I think the most important thing to remember is what this research really highlights, and that's the potential connection between our environment and, thyroid health. Kind of like a wake-up call, right? That the things we're exposed to in our daily lives, they could have a much bigger impact on our health than we realize.
So it's not just about genetics or bad luck when it comes to thyroid issues.
Exactly. This research is saying, hey, environmental factors, you know, they might play a role as well, and that's potentially really empowering
Okay.
because it gives us something we can actually try to, control.
That's a really good point. So what can we do with this information? Should we all be like running out, getting our blood tested for these specific antibodies?
Well, it's not quite as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, this is still a relatively new area of research. There's a lot we don't know yet. More studies are definitely needed to confirm these findings and, figure out exactly how these chemical exposures translate into real-world thyroid problems.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess the takeaway here is not to panic, but to be aware.
Exactly. Stay informed, pay attention to your health, and if you have any concerns about your thyroid, talk to your doctor.
This deep dive has been eye-opening, to say the least. I know I'm going to be thinking a lot more about the products I use and the potential chemicals I'm being exposed to every day.
And that's what we hope for with these deep dives, to spark that curiosity and get people thinking differently about their health.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this episode. To our listeners, thanks for joining us on this fascinating exploration into this complex world of chemicals, the immune system, and the thyroid. We hope you learned something new today.
Until next time, stay curious.